Girl vanishes. 7 months later, hiker tells cops to look closer at log pile. As Dermot walked past a log pile, his ears picked up. He heard something out of place. He cocked his ear to hear it more clearly. He had assumed this was an ordinary log pile. He didn't know how wrong he was. His legs froze in place. He wanted to call for help, but he was so far from civilization, no one would hear him. He slowly crept closer to the logs, not knowing what to expect. Before we begin, if you're interested in these type of videos, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell. Dermot loved nothing more than hiking in the outdoors. He loved the smell of the pine trees and the feeling of dirt beneath his walking boots. He would spend most of his days out in nature. But Dermot was unaware of what he would unearth when he got dressed and headed out towards the forest on Sunday morning. Dermot lived in a small town called Riverwood. Everyone was friendly and they knew each other in this town. Everyone would help one another if they needed to. But just 7 months prior to Dermot's morning walk, something had happened that clung to the minds of everyone in the small town. A small girl named Alice had disappeared after visiting a friend on our road. The only thing they found of the 11-year-old was her pink bicycle. Her parents were a wreck. She would never go anywhere without their permission. Maybe she got lost on her way home? The whole town had found out about it and did what they could, but still there was no sign of her. 100 concerned residents from the town decided to help with the search for the girl. Dermot was one of them. With the police accompanying them, they all arrived outside the little girl's home. They were all prepared for the long night ahead of them. Everyone just hoped she was okay. They were ready to search for hours if they had to. 100 feet walked over the soil of the fields and over the tarmac of the roads. 100 voices were all calling out the same name, Alice. Dermot could feel his stomach twisting into a knot. But there was no evidence of what happened to the girl. There was no sign she was all right, but none to the contrary, so everyone kept their hopes up. Jan was a friend of Alice's parents, and she said, "It was stressful and emotional. We were all out there just walking back and forth from one end to the other, yelling her name." As time wore on, people felt more discouraged. The search was now a disorganized party of people stumbling into each other while calling out the little girl's name. By the 7th day, there were fewer flashlights compared to the other nights. More people had given up, and the people that stayed found it hard to carry on too. The girl could be anywhere. She could be in the woods, in the fields, or somewhere they'd never expect. The search was like finding a needle in a haystack. Then, suddenly, everyone heard the sound of chopping. Police helicopters came to comb the woods with infrared cameras, while ground units with dogs also looked for clues. Even with this help, there was still nothing to go on. No sign of the small girl for days, which turned into weeks. Were they too late? The mystery soon shrouded this case. Dermot was sad about the news of Alice and how the search came up with nothing. He helped where he could, searching at night for the small girl in the woods. But still, there was nothing they could find. It was as if she had just up and vanished. But Dermot was unaware of just how close he actually was. As an experienced hiker, Dermot felt he was most useful searching through the tough terrain of the mountains that surrounded their town. He could get into places others couldn't. But as the helicopters and dogs had no luck locating the girl, Dermot felt he was throwing sand against the wall and asking it to stick. Still, he felt he had to do something. Little did he know, however, that his decision would turn this mysterious case on its head. It was now 7 months since Alice's disappearance. The young 11-year-old girl had still not been found. Some people moved on with their lives, but not Dermot. Every time he went for a hike, he finds himself searching new areas of the wilderness just for her. He grabbed his bottled water and walking gear and headed out into the mountains once again. Only this time, life as he knew it would change. Dermot had been hiking for just under an hour. He started to break a sweat and could feel the burn of a workout beginning to take hold in his muscles. Despite a struggle, he powered through, enjoying the stunning scenery as he breathed in fresh air. He closed his eyes and smiled as he took a deep inhale of the scent of wild grass and oak trees. Suddenly his eyes shot awake. The smile vanished from his face. He held his breath as he identified the strange sound. It was a voice, a very faint one, but Dermot had no idea where it was coming from. Suddenly he thought of Alice. The sound made his blood run cold. He shouted out into the empty space around him, "Alice?" But there was no response. Then the voice suddenly stopped. What was going on? Dermot cautioned forward as he looked around on hyper alert. Was this a joke? Was this all in his head? He felt sick to his stomach. He wanted to run forward and scream out for little Alice, but he also knew that maybe that wasn't the best decision. After all, he had no idea what he was walking into. Then, as quickly as it disappeared, he heard the same voice that sent a shiver up his spine. Only this time, it was closer. Dermot's frozen in his tracks again. He steadied his breathing to try to identify where the sound was coming from. Then, once more, it stopped. Heart racing, he ran forward, and then he saw it. A random pile of logs. What were they doing here? Curious, he walked toward them to inspect it. Once he reached it, his eyes popped. He wanted to run and scream for help, but who would hear him in these hills? He knew he had to be quick. With his hands trembling, he picked up his phone and dialed 911. He hoped it wasn't too late. Dermot paced back and forth as he waited for help to arrive. He didn't know what to do. He'd never been in a situation like this before. All he could do was not mess with the evidence and listen out for the voice again. He was so close he could feel it. The police headed out into the mountains immediately after hearing Dermot frantically tell them what he saw on the phone. "Come quick, now, please," Dermot pleaded with the cops before his voice broke. What had Dermot discovered? It took them just under 30 minutes, but finally the cops arrived. They had no idea what was waiting for them. When the cops arrived at the hills, they were stumped to find a pile of logs and a distraught-looking Dermot. "What exactly is going on here?" one officer asked, his tone stern and authoritative. Dermot walked up to the officer with tears trickling down his cheeks. "Just look over there," he said, and pointed to the unfitting pile of logs. The officer made his way over to the pile of logs, bracing himself for what he would find. With each step he took, an uneasy feeling crept up his spine. He didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling about these logs. When the officer got closer to the logs, he saw what Dermot saw. He felt sick to his stomach. What was it? From a distance, the pile of logs looked just like that, a pile of logs. However, upon closer inspection, the officer got suspicious of the perfect rectangular shape and black lines. When he realized what this pile of logs actually was, a terrible feeling grew deep within the pit of his stomach. The odd-looking lines on the pile of logs were actually windows. What he thought was a pile of logs was actually a secret hideaway. But what exactly needed to stay hidden away from everyone to see? When the officer and Dermot looked inside the secret cabin, they were absolutely horrified. Inside the secret cabin was a small accommodation. Then suddenly and shockingly, a young girl emerged from the corner of the room. The officer yelped in surprise at seeing the young girl. He took a closer look at the girl and realized exactly who she was. He was lost for words. Dermot was in tears of relief. This had become personal for him. The mysterious case of the missing 11-year-old girl, called Alice, was finally progressing. After 7 months of hopelessness, she was finally found. The officer was startled at Dermot's discovery and perseverance. But what was she doing here? The officer immediately called for backup and got the little girl to safety. But was it too late? Were they still in danger? Who owned the cabin? More cops arrived at the scene in no time and took the disoriented Alice back to the station for questioning. Alice told officers that a man had kidnapped her and put her in the secret cabin. However, as hard as they tried to piece together what happened, the police had no leads. Alice was returned back home safely, and the case is still open to this day. Please don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell for more content like this.